Let me just encourage you to open your Bible to Matthew chapter 8, starting on verse 1. We're only going to read 4 verses. And of course, this is an interesting story that Matthew put right after the Sermon on the Mount. Remember, this is the longest sermon and that Jesus preached. He was talking about kingdom principles. And now it's interesting because at this particular moment, we would see now whatever Jesus was teaching, he was putting it into practice. Because there's a lot of preaching or preacher that doesn't put their preaching into practice, but Jesus is totally different. Let me start in verse 1. Matthew 8, chapter 8, verse 1. When he came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. Okay, so just like what I've said, this is Matthew connecting the story in the Sermon on the Mount. Already large crowd is following Jesus at this particular moment. He was watching this, what was going on. And I think if you wanted to open your Bible, I like the last portion of Matthew 7, the last portion of the Sermon on the Mount, where Matthew recorded in verse 28, it reads, when 7:28, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. Everybody was amazed because this is something that they have never heard before, something that they've never heard before. Verse 29, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teacher of the law. So he had taught with authority. People are watching him. Now we move to 1. So now in verse 2, something happened. In the midst of people watching, in the midst of people seeing Jesus, and here's what happened. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you could make me clean. So many times I've mentioned about leprosy and how socially outcast these people were at the time of Jesus. A leprous man would be the closest thing to the Walking Dead. That's the whole description. The Old Testament commanded that if a man contracted leprosy, according to Leviticus chapter 13, verses 45 and 46, here's what happens. So I want you to give you a picture for you to understand what was going on. His clothes shall be torn and his head bare. So torn clothes, not the stylish like, what Kanye would put in the Yeezy, not those kind of stuff. I know that's the trend, but this one is not. Okay, and he shall cover his mustache and cry, unclean, unclean, he shall be unclean. So that means torn clothes, you cannot wear nice clothes. And when you pass by and see people, you have to cry out, unclean. Just to announce to people that you are unclean, that you are leprous, so that they're not gonna, be affected or be infected with your disease. He shall be unclean. All the days he has the sword, he shall be unclean. Okay? He is unclean and he shall dwell alone. Wow. His dwelling shall be outside camp. So all of these people are isolated. Usually they would live together with people who had same disease as them, and they would live outside camp. That means outside your family relationship, outside your community. I don't know about you, but in a culture like a Jewish culture is almost like a Filipino culture and a Latino culture where we love family, like familia is something that is sacred to us. We love to mingle together. We love the relationship. Imagine being taken out of that community. As I watch this, I notice 3 things in verse 2. Here's the first one. That this man, leprous all in all, and with condition that he's not supposed to mingle with people, the fact that he came to Jesus. Look at that. A man with leprosy came. So he decided. He's violating whatever law was enacted, whatever, barriers that was put. He came to Jesus. And next, he came reverently. You say that he knelt before him. Some translation would say that he came worshiping Jesus. He came, he decided to come. If you are that leprous person, you're thinking all the things, maybe what people would say, maybe the things that you've heard people say, and how you don't know how Jesus is going to react. But yet he came. Number 2, he came reverently. That means he came worshiping the Lord. And also 3rd, he acknowledged Jesus' power. Look at this, and said, he knelt before him, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. What a statement. You can make me clean. so interesting about this, because not only that they acknowledge that God is able, but also that God is willing. Because there's a difference. There's a lot of people that are able to help, but they are not willing to help. There's a lot of people, in our experience, that they are able enough to do something about a situation, but they're not willing. And I think this is an example of the God that loves us, the God who cares, not only that He is able, but also He is willing to come and meet us in our time of need. Look at this and how Jesus responded to this man, coming to Him, worshiping Him, acknowledging who He is and acknowledging His power. Two things here. Verse 3, Jesus reached out His hand and touched the man. And again, this is not, here's what I'm thinking. You're not supposed to touch a leprous man. You are going to defile yourself when you do. But yet, I was just thinking, imagine yourself being there, just watching the situation. And if you're been set by this culture that you're not to touch, unclean people, you're watching and you're like, whoa, did he just touch someone? I'm thinking, the moment that he touched him, he got clean. So I think there's no problem with that. But yet not only that, but also that he touched him and also he spoke the word. Look at this. I am willing, he said, verse 3, be clean. I love that. So many of us today, after all of what's happening here in our in the whole world, the pandemic crisis, and now the social unrest that is happening in our nation, just the awakening of people. Maybe you're saying, Lord, there's a lot of things going on in my life. Furlough, job situation. Maybe you're sick today. Maybe you are living in sin and you're ashamed to come to the Lord. If you come to Him in worship and acknowledging who He is willing to touch and reach out to you and also to speak the word. I love this, be clean. Immediately, he was cured of his leprosy. What a bold action. What a bold moment from this man. He's willing to take the risk. When I was preparing for this, I was asking God, Lord, give us a word today as we come and pray. Here's the word of the Lord for us. He's willing. God is saying, Lord, maybe you're asking, Lord, if you are willing. God is willing. God is the God that we serve is a God who loves to meet us in our time of need and to respond to our prayers. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to come just like this leprous man. I imagine that we are all like him. We are unclean because of sin. Unclean because we are not worthy to come. But yet, as we come and draw near to God, James says that He will draw near to us. And here's the encouragement that our God is willing to reach out and touch us and to speak His word to heal us and to make us whole. I want to invite you today as we do that.